Today we'll be discussing about in times of being unknown. In times of being unknown. So, unsa kay mahitabo kung dili ta nailhan. So, in times of being unknown. Let's open our Bibles in Daniel chapter 5, verse 1 to 29. Daniel chapter 5, verse 1 to 29. This is a continuation sa story ni Daniel. Grabe, very rich ang book of Daniel. And every book in the Bible rich kaayo. So that's why we take time to really study. At least, kung dili nato mabasahan ang Bible from one chapter to another chapter, at least every Sunday makabasa tag one chapter. So congratulations kung nakumpleto ninyo ang kini nga series up to now. Wala mo maka-absent. So meaning to say, nakabasa na mo og 4 chapters sa book of Daniel. Karon na pod, another chapter na pod ang atong mabasahan. Alright, so in times of being unknown or sa panahon nga, laos na ka. So, laos na. So, unsay akong buhaton ani. Alright, so, and I'm not saying this in particular to the people who are advanced in years. I'm not saying that. Even if you are young, but you feel like murag laos na ka sa imo sa imuhang sphere of influence or sa imong company or sa imong workplace, feeling nimo murag laos naman ko, wala naman ko ikabuga. So what will happen to you? So it's very important. Maybe you are a businessman or businesswoman and you feel like ang imong business murag wala naman sa uso. So what would be the next? So Daniel chapter 5 verse 1 to 29. King Belshazzar made a great feast for 1,000 of his lords and drank wine in front of the 1,000. Grabihan, nagubog-hubog. Belshazzar, when he tasted the wine, commanded that the vessels of gold and silver that Nebuchadnezzar, his father, had taken out of the temple in Jerusalem be brought. To the king and his lords, his wives and his concubines might drink from them. Then they brought in the gold vessels that had been taken out of the temple. So that gold vessels were being used to worship God, but now ilang gigamit para mag-inuman sila, magtagay sila. Okay? So it's a big insult to the God of Israel, what they did. So the king and his lords and his wives and his concubines might drink from them. Verse 3. Then they brought in the golden vessels that had been taken out of the temple, the house of gold, the house of God in Jerusalem. And the king and his lords, his wives and his concubines drank from them. They drank wine and praised the gods, many gods of gold and silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone. Tanang klase nga God, ilang i-worship. Immediately, the fingers of a human hand appeared and wrote on a plaster on the wall of the king's palace. So remember that this is the king of Babylon, a pagan king who doesn't believe God, one true God. Only the Israelite people, especially Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So they are in a foreign land because kuan sila, captive sila, si kining Babylon. And this finger of human hand appeared and wrote a plaster of the wall of the king's palace opposite the lampstand, and the king saw the hand as it wrote. Then the king's color changed. Pwede din, ma-change ang color. Murag nahimo siyang hawk. Green. Suddenly, he was green. And his thoughts alarmed him. His limbs gave way and his knees knocked together. Murag nagpangurog siya. The king called loudly to bring in the enchanters, the Chaldeans, and the astrologers. The king declared to the wise men of Babylon, whoever reads this writing and shows me its interpretation shall be clothed with purple and have a chain of gold around his neck and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom. So the king was first ruler, and then there was an assistant, and there's the third ruler. Okay? And then, verse 8, then all the king's wise men came in. But they could not read the writing or make known to the king the interpretation. So remember, all the wise men were so frustrated because they cannot give the mystery, the interpretation, mysterious interpretation of Nebuchadnezzar's dream. So 2 dreams, and then now, ang anak ni Nebuchadnezzar, na po yung problema, dili dream, but naay nisuwat sa wall nga kamot. And no one, the wise men, cannot give the interpretation. Then King Belshazzar was greatly alarmed, and his color changed, and his lords were perplexed. The queen, because of the words of the king and his lords, came into the banqueting hall, and the queen declared, "O king, live forever. Let not your thoughts alarm you or your color change. There is a man in your kingdom in whom is the spirit of the holy gods. In the days of your father, light and understanding and wisdom, like the wisdom of the gods, were found in him. And King Nebuchadnezzar, your father, the king, made him chief of the magicians, enchanters, and Chaldeans, and astrologers." So Daniel was the chief during the time of Belteshazzar's dad, during his reign. So verse 12, because an excellent spirit, knowledge, and understanding to interpret dreams, explain riddles, and solve problems were found in this Daniel, whom the king named Belteshazzar. Now let Daniel be called, and he will show the interpretation. Then Daniel was brought in before the king. The king answered and said to Daniel, "You are that Daniel, one of the exiles of Judah, whom the king my father brought from Judah. I have heard of you that the spirit of the gods is in you, and that light and understanding and excellent wisdom are found in you. Now the wise men, the enchanters, have been brought in before me to read this writing and make known to me its interpretation. But they could not show the interpretation of the matter. But I have heard that you can give interpretations and solve problems. Now, if you can read the writing and make known to me its interpretation, you shall be clothed with purple and have a chain of gold around your neck, and you shall be the third ruler in the kingdom." Then Daniel answered and said before the king, "Let your gifts be for yourself, not interested, and give your rewards to another. Nevertheless, I will read the writing to the king and make known to him the interpretation." You know what? Makita na to motivation sa pag-serve ni Daniel. It's not about money, it's not about fame, it's not about position, but it's about obedience to God. So verse 18, "O king, the Most High God gave Nebuchadnezzar, your father, kingship and greatness and glory and majesty. And because of the greatness that he gave him, all peoples, nations, and languages trembled and feared before him. Whom he killed, and whom he would, he kept alive. Whom he would, he raised up, and whom he would, he humbled. But when his heart was lifted up and his spirit was hardened so that he dealt proudly, he was brought down from his kindly throne and kingly throne, and his glory was taken from him. He was driven from among the children of mankind, and his mind was made like that of a beast, and his dwelling was with the wild donkeys. He was fed grass like an ox, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, until he knew that the Most High God rules the kingdom of mankind and sets over it whom he will." So he was just reminding the son, Belshazzar, what happened to his father, Nebuchadnezzar, during his time. "And you, his son, Belshazzar, have not humbled your heart, though you knew all this. But you have lifted up yourself against the Lord of heaven, and the vessels of his house have been brought in before you, and you and your lords, your wives, and your concubines have drunk wine from them. And you have praised the gods of silver and gold, of bronze, iron, wood, and stone, which do not see or hear or know, but the God in whose hand is your breath, and whose are all your ways you have not honored. Then from his presence the hand was sent, and this writing was inscribed, and this is the writing that was inscribed. Mene, Mene, Tekel, and Parsin. This is the interpretation of the matter. Many, God has numbered the days of your kingdom and brought it to the end. Tekel, you have been weighed in the balances and found wanting. Perez, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Then Belshazzar gave the command, and Daniel was clothed with purple. A chain of gold was put around his neck, and a proclamation was made about him that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom. What a story. The title of my message today is, Don't Stop Until It's Time. Don't stop until it's time. Dahil kayo nahitabo sa itong kinabuhi that forces us sometimes to stop. And even though it's not yet time to stop doing it, but because of the circumstances and because of what we've been through, we stop doing it. But I want us to understand this, that we don't need to stop if God did not give another instruction for us to do. So don't stop until it's time. What we mean by that is keep doing what God wants you to do until God gives you another instruction to stop doing it, because I have another instruction for you to do something or to do new things. But when we are not hearing another instruction from God, it's not good for us to stop doing it, because in the very first place, we are just obeying God's instruction why we do things the way we do things today. Okay? So don't stop until it's time. Because of what we've been through, most of the time, we stop doing a lot of things even though God wanted us to do it until now. Because we cannot see that God is moving. We cannot see that God is doing something behind the scene. That's why we stop doing it. But God wanted to tell us today, my child, don't stop until it's time. So what would you do if your leader who knows you by name died and another leader is rising up? That is the most difficult moment of our lives, because kanang bitong nakatilaw na taog kanang naay mo consult sa atua nga leader. Murag second man or second in command. Nga murag muduol sa imuha, usa ako mubuhat ani nga desisyon. Unsa maayo ba ni nga desisyon? Nya ikaw murag kag maka-feel ba duto ni trust ako akong leader, ni trust ako akong boss. Okay? So I think knowledgeable kay ka. Maybe because you are a Christian, so that's why you are naa kay wisdom, naa kay understanding. So naa ko'y buhaton para mo progress ang akong business. So is this the right thing to do? Nya ma-feel nimo ba nga laninduta sa ako ang boss, akong leader, ni trust gyud nako, naa siya pagtan-aw nako nga naa ko'y wisdom. Maybe because this is the work of God in my life. And all of a sudden that leader na transfer, that leader, wala mabutang into the position that you are expecting that leader will remain in that position. All of the sudden, ang imong leader or ang imong boss, wala na. Okay? And now here comes the new boss, doesn't know you. The new boss who doesn't know you. Or you are being transferred to the place that nobody recognized that you are an amazing leader, an amazing man, a loving man, and a helpful man in your community before. So, what will you do? Many things na pwede natong buhaton, usa natong buhaton is, we will build connections. Yeah? Oh, kung wa sila kailan ako, magpaila ako. Madto ko sa akong boss. Actually, boss, di man ka mangutana, no? Sa una, katong imong gipulihan, ako iyang pangutan-on permi. Okay, naamang ko wisdom. Kibaw ka, boss. Na-level up ang atong company. Actually, di lang ko sa pagpanghambog, no? Tungod na ako. So, pwede ingon ana imong buhaton. Ug dili na siya bawal. Pwede, magpailata. Nga kung palitan, igabli sa guard. Igabli sa guard sa mall. Wa siya kailani mo. Unya, tanawon yun imong bag, tanawon yun pag-ay mong bag. Wa siya kay bawang nga inigabli dito sa imong office. Dito ra kag sud sa imong office, naapay mo alalay, naapay mo kuha sa imong bag padung sa imong office. Unya, igsud nimo sa ka-guard, diri sa mall. Tanawon, moingon ka nga, wa ka kailan ako? Pwede ka magpaila, di ba? Wa kailan ako? Wa kaila, driver, ipailili ragod kung kinsa ko. So pwede na itong buhaton. Why? Because we want to build an authority and a connection, the right connection to that person so that that person will give you respect, will give you, kanabitang, murag mo honor sa imuha ba because nagpaila-ila ka. Pwede nang buhaton. Actually, pwede nang buhaton ni Daniel. Pagkamatay sa King Belteshazzar, pwedeng moadto si Belshazzar, moadto si Daniel kang Belshazzar, mingon siya nga, King, actually, I know, wala kakailan ako, kay dugay na tong panahon. Unya, bata pa kay kaadto, sipunon pa kay ka. So ako si Daniel, by the way. Unya, ako man lang ang nag-interpret sa mga dreams imong dad. Ako man lang naghatag siya warning. Ako, gi-promote ko niya pag-ayo. Actually, during his time, I was second in command. And even my friends na promote nila sila, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, pwedeng buhaton na ni Daniel, but he did not do it. He did not do it. So what would you do if the leader who knows you died, or he was not the one that you are responsible with, or you are reporting with? What will you do? Build a connection? Introduce yourself? Or just stay and relax and enjoy the movie? What will you do? You know what? Two things that we need to do if we are experiencing that. If we feel like, murag, wala may laing instruction si God sa ako. Di ba siguro na effective, Lord? So ako pa ba rin padayonan? So, number one, keep doing the last instruction of God. Keep doing the last instruction of God. Kung wala siya ni hatag og another instruction, keep doing the last instruction of God. Because He knows what's best for you. Keep doing the last instruction of God. Wala siya gihatag nga another instruction sa imuha, then you will keep doing it until God changes it. Don't stop doing it until it's time. And second, put your hope in God. While doing it, Lord, actually, ang akong hope dili sa akong leader, actually, akong hope dili sa akong boss, actually, dili akong hope sa mga leaders sa among community or even sa among nation, ang akong hope dili sa akong mga connection sa mga tao nga nakailan ako, akong hope, God, is in you. So that's why I will not stop doing what you want me to do because this is your last instruction sa akua. Wala pa kay gihatag nga another instruction sa akua because my hope is in you. Can we clap our hands to God? Put your hope in God. You know, that's what happened to Daniel. Daniel was so influential, so famous, so powerful, na authority gihatag ang king sa iya, but suddenly the king died and Daniel was become a nobody in Babylon. But you know what? Here's what I believe. Daniel did not stop doing the last instruction of God to his life. Even though ang bagong king wala makailan niya. I can imagine nga si Daniel nagsigigihapog mingle, nagsigigihapog istorya sa mga wise men, nagsigigihapon siya tabang to solve the problem sa Babylon. Kung ang mga wise men ay i-consult sa iya, he keeps on doing the routine. He keeps on doing even though it was so bored because the king doesn't know him and the king doesn't call his name. He was not consulted by the king anymore because the king doesn't know him anymore. But I believe Daniel keeps on doing that one day and another day and the third day, and after that, few years after, Daniel did not stop doing it because the hope of Daniel anchored not to the king, but anchored to God. So he did not stop doing it. That's why God made an event. This is so good. God made an event so that the king would feel the need of someone who has the wisdom like the wisdom of Daniel. So there was an event, okay? Look at this very carefully. God made an event because Daniel did not stop doing the last instruction of God. He did not change it, but he keeps on doing it. For after a few years of not stop doing it, God made an event so that Daniel would be called out and his service once again be needed by the king. So unsa ang event? It was not intentional sa king, but God was intentionally moving. Even though I don't see if you're working, you never stop. You never stop working. Even though I don't see that you, Lord, come on, God. Thank you, God, for doing that. Come on, let's give God a praise. Now the king was so problematic, and then he called all the wise men, and then not one of the wise men can interpret what was written on the wall. Kay bao kakinsay nag-inform sa king na ay Daniel. The Bible scholars believe that his grandparents, his grandmom, not really the wife of King Nebuchadnezzar, but the mom of King Nebuchadnezzar, the queen. Yun siya, actually, apo, nakahinumdum ko, naingan nga actually Daniel. He's a man like the spirit of the gods was in him because he was serving during the time of your dad. And look at that, in verse 13. Then Daniel was brought in because of the queen, before the king. Then the king answered and said to Daniel, "You are Daniel, one of the exiles of Judah." You know what's that word? Nga nung gi-emphasize niyang exiles? Because wala pa nakabuild og rapport si Daniel sa iya. He did not trust Daniel. That's why he was telling, di ba usa man ka sa mga gilabay? Mga among gikuha dito sa Judah, usa man ka? So meaning to say, why do I trust you? Why do I need to listen to you? Why do I need to trust you? Why do I need to believe what you want to say? You're Daniel, right? And actually, I don't know you. Ang imong dating, you're an Israelite. You're like a foreigner to me. You're like nobody to me. You're one of the exiles, whom the king, my father, brought from Judah. Why do I give weight to what you will be saying to me? Why do I believe in you? Why do I need to hear you? But of course, this is an event that God created. So verse 14, tingnan siya, I have heard of you. Actually, nakadungog na din siya, na tabi-tabi di. So if you don't stop doing what God wants you to do, the last instruction of God, until it's time for you to change it because God gave you another instruction. If you don't stop doing it, nanaday nagsigig tabi-tabi dito. Kakibaw ka kanang si Reggie baya, may ka na nga kuan, mo trabaho. Kana si Don baya, faithful ka na siya ang trabaho. So, mauba. So nakadungog na siya. Kibaw ka na Daniel rin. Nakadungog na ang king. And siya, I have heard of you, that the Spirit of God, the gods, is in you, and that light and understanding and excellent wisdom are found in you. God was the one who created an event so that Daniel will be heard again, so that Daniel can serve again, so that Daniel can have an influence again, so that Daniel can lead again, so that Daniel can be heard. The message that is coming from, not from Daniel, but coming from God. God created an event. Do you realize that sometimes you are being accepted in that job or in your workplace or any companies that you are in? You're accepted not because you are working really so hard to be there in that company or to handle that business, but because it was God who created an event to put you right where you are. Come on, clap your hands to God. If you open the eyes of your faith, you can see that it was not you who's moving. It was God who's moving and created an event so that your service will be needed. And here comes the time that the king heard about Daniel and he needs the service of this man. That's why he was calling Daniel. You are Daniel, I heard about you. And because God created an event, so Daniel, he comes in front of the king and was ready to do the same thing. Not new thing or another thing that he doesn't know how to do, but the same routine, the same routine. And Daniel was so prepared. Why? Because he keeps doing it every day. He did not stop until it's time. He was ready. So remember, if master na kay ka mo drive, but later on na kay driver, okay? After 5 years, confident pa ba ka mo drive? Gawa kay gunit-gunit sa Manibela for 5 years? Di ba dili? Kung kinahanglan kang bitaron, nakalimot na raba ko. Automatic ba ni? Dili automatic. Ayay. Di ba? Patay. Unsaon ni nakuron. Nga naman, because you did not do it every day for 5 years. You're not confident. Now, I assume that Daniel keeps on doing it, keeps on involving himself to interpret a lot of problems and conflicts and mysteries in Babylon, because during the time what the new king called him, he was ready. He was still ready. Why? Because he did not stop doing the last instruction of God until it's time. That is you as well. If God tells you, don't stop worshiping me until it's time, I want you to stop, then don't stop worshiping me. Don't stop reading the Bible until it's time, then don't stop. Because during the time that God will create an event, you are so ready to honor God. You are so ready to believe God. You are so ready to worship God. Why? You never stop. You never stop. You never stop until it's time. Can we give God a praise? You never stop until it's time. When God created an event and God wanted you to be called out, you are so ready, because in the very first place, you never stop doing it. This is the last instruction of God, of my God in my life. Don't stop until it's time. You know what, Noah? You know what? How many years did Noah build the ark? Kung ang CCLX gibuild for 2 years or 3 years, Noah built the ark, not 10 years. Guess how many years? Not 50 years. 75 to 100 years. So imagine the routine every day. That you are building this big ship. This big ark that nobody understands. And every day your kids question you.
Dad, dili siguro tinuod. Tingay damgo na to nimo, Dad. Ato ning ihunog, Dad ka. 25 years ta in town nila bay, wala gyud flood. Wa jud ko nakita nga nay mga dagom diha. Unya, Dad, di ba jud ta kahuman ani kay 1/4 pa lang in town atong nahuman for 15 years. So Dad, ato na ning hunongon, Dad. What did Noah did? No, this is the last instruction of my God. I keep doing this every day. I keep doing this 8 hours a day. I keep doing this 24/7. I keep doing this. Why? Because this is the last instruction of my God. And every time he comes to the presence of our God, God, can you give me another instruction? Because it seems like it's just my dream. Because I've been building this ark for 50 years, and I cannot see that there will be flood, and I cannot see that we can finish this. And then there's no another instruction from God. Musmahay lang si God sa iya. Mingon si Noah, God, come on now, give me another instruction. Mingon lang si God, do I keep doing this? For 75 to 100 years. But when the flood came, this is so good. Noah and his whole family was so ready. Why? Because Noah and his family did not stop doing what God instructed them to do. The last instruction that God gave them, they keep on doing that. When the flood came, when the event of God was created, then Noah and his whole family, and only his whole family was so ready. Why? Because they did not stop doing until it's time. It's the same thing for you. When your promotion comes, you will not be surprised because you are so ready. Why? You did not stop doing what God wants you to do every day, every hour, every minute. Why? Because you put your hope in God, not in our economy. Come on, go ahead, clap your hands to God. I remember one time when I was a student worker. So this word student worker, meaning to say I was a student in a Bible school. And during weekend, Saturdays and Sundays, na ako'y assignment ng church. So student, weekdays, church worker during weekends. And I was assigned to go in that province in Luzon. And I was happy preparing myself for 2 months. And after 2 months, I'm about to go sa akong assignment. And then my leader suddenly, what? You will not go there. Actually, I already sent someone. So niyo ko, ako di ay. Ako di ay. Isa ka, sa tanaw na mo, and then, tawag ko another week. After 2 months, wala nag-inform na ako. So, tawag ko another week. And then, yung sila nga, actually, ibalhin ka na mo in this province. Pastor, pwede ko makigstorya? Can you explain to me what happened? Kay, ganahan lang ko makasabot. Of course, I'm willing to obey. And then, he created a meeting para makaistorya ko sa mga leader na mo, bishops, generals. And then here comes the head of, or the general superintendent. Kisa ba ito, istoryahan kisa, siya di ay, student worker, pahawata di ay, ano dahil sa issue? Kuan manggod, question siya, kung dili siya mo sunod, iawol. Then ipahawa sila. Mura kog piso dito. So, awol, absent without leave. Ano awol? Okay, so what din ko sa akong mga relatives? I'll go home to Cebu without an assignment. So I went here. Because that time, during that time, it was my year out. So kung year out ka, ika-4th year ni mo sa Bible School, buhian ka sa gawas, i-test ka, kung walay mag-supervise ni mo, balik pa bagyapon ka. So that was the time na year out, wala ko assignment. So my family were so happy. It's like, at least nakadiri. Actually, wala ko gi-assign diri. Niuli lang ko kay wako assignment. Tingnan sila, awol ko na ko, so I'm done.
Okay. You know what I did? The first week that I came back here, I was asking, Lord, unsa akong buhaton, Lord, now that wala ko assignment? So, di na ako kabalik po sa Bible school. So, unsa? And it seems like God is telling me, what was the last instruction that I gave to you? Your last instruction, God, is I'm a student worker. So I'm still working, reading your word, meditating your word, teaching the young people, helping my pastor here in my hometown. So God said, that's the last instruction, keep doing it. So I did not stop doing it. I did not stop doing it, even though I don't have a support. Because, gisan ako, wala. So I don't have a support. I keep doing it, serving in my home church, teaching the young people, helping the leaders of the church, helping the pastor. And after a year, God created an event. After a year, my leader from Luzon came here because of the event. And they saw me. And I was afraid to greet them, to approach them because, kibaw ka nga, sama ding pisua nga, di ba? So, good day. And then, palayo ko. And then they were asking the people, ayun sila nga, kumusta na siya? Kung sa iyang gibuhat diri? And the people around them testifying, you know what, since he came, he keep on leading the young people in our church. And you know what, our church keep on committing their lives and serving God because of him. He did not stop doing what God instructed him to do. Really? And then after that, the leader approached me, the one who told, kung dili siya musunod, awol na siya. So, he approached me, Zab, would you like to come back? Are you ready to come back? And ko, yes sir, I'm ready to come back. So to cut the story short, I'm here in front of you because there was this moment in my life that I was so bored doing the last thing that God told me to do, but I did not stop doing it because that was the last instruction of my God. And until now, I keep doing it. Why? Because that is the instruction of my God. Don't stop doing it until it's time. Come on, let's give God a praise. Now imagine if I stopped doing it and my leader approached me and told me, are you ready to come back? Mayon ko nga, ay, dili sir, kay nag-drive na kong tricycle. Di na ako kibaw actually yun sa pag-encourage sa mga tao. Di ba? But because I did not stop doing it, because I believe that was the last instruction of my God for me to do. And I did not do another thing or new thing because I'm so bored to follow it. After a year, God created an event like Daniel. And Daniel was restored. Look at this, what happened to Daniel. Because he did not stop until it's time. Verse 16, but I have heard that you can give interpretation and solve problems. In verse 17, then Daniel answered and said before the king, let your gifts be for yourself and give your rewards to another, because my motivation to serve you and serve Babylon is not money and it's not about fame, it's not about position and all, but it's about obedience to God. So what Daniel did, give the interpretation to the king, and king was so happy even though the interpretation was so bad, because Daniel did not stop until it's time. So God definitely gave him reward. Verse 9, look at this, verse 9. Then Belshazzar gave the command, and Daniel was clothed with purple, and a chain of gold was put around his neck, and a proclamation was made about him, and he should be the third ruler in the kingdom. Why was that? Why was promotion came in?
Because as we know, always the promotion comes from our God. And Daniel did not stop doing the last instruction of my God. Every time you honor God and you did not stop honoring God in everything that you do each day, God will create an event so that you will encounter how God will provide, so that you will encounter how God will promote, so that you will encounter how God will prosper you. Come on, let's give God a praise for that. Remember that it was God who started the work in you, and God is still the one who will finish the work He started in your life, no matter who's the leader. You become like who you are today. It's not because of you, but it was because of God started a good work in you. And don't worry. Put your hope in God because He will complete it. He will complete it. You thought that God is not working? You thought that God is not moving? You're wrong. Even though you don't see it, even though you don't feel it, God is moving, and God will create another event so that you will be promoted, so that increase will come in your life, so that God will use you to be a blessing, so that God will use you to speak up, so that God will use you to encourage someone, because that's the heart of God to each and every one of us. Look at this, Philippians chapter 1, verse 6. Can we read all this? And if you believe after you read, clap your hands to God after you read. Okay? 1, 2, 3, go. I am sure of this, that He who began a good work in you will bring it to completion at the day of Jesus Christ. Do you believe that? Clap your hands to God. Paul says, I am sure of this. I am sure of this. Even though the world is telling you, no, don't be sure about your future. There's no certainty. There's no assurance about your future. But the Word of God is telling you, I am sure of this. I am sure of this. I am sure of this. That He who began a good work in you will bring it into completion. Will bring it to the next level. Will bring you to the next increase. Will bring you to the next encounter with God, because the one who gives you the promise, come on now, He's so faithful. Come on, give God a praise. Don't stop until it's time, because God will finish what He started in your life. He will finish it. He will finish it. Kung nakakita ka nga, wala pa mahuman si Lord, don't worry. He will finish it. The reason why you are still alive, because God is not done yet. God is not done yet. Nganong nakagawas ka sa tanang mga aksidente, nganong nakagawas ka sa tanang sakit, that up to now you are still alive together with your family, because God is not done yet. He will bring it to completion. Come on, 5 seconds, clap your hands to God. Don't stop until it's time. You receive an instruction coming from God. If God gave you another instruction, that's the time you have to stop doing the past routine and the past practice. Don't stop until it's time. What is your season today? Do you feel like you are just doing the routines of life? God is telling you, my child, don't stop until it's time. And don't worry, because what I have started in your life, I will complete it. You don't need to do some extra effort to complete it, because it was not you who started it. It was me, your God, who started it. And I'm faithful enough. I'm faithful enough to finish it. I'm faithful enough to finish it. Don't stop until it's time.